There's been a roughly, I think it was 8 to 20% increase in sub-Saharan, that's what they called it, sub-Saharan ancestry as a result of slavery.
Okay.
Here he is, the fraud projecting from his swivel chair, downplaying and denying the geographical, historical significance of the Sahara Desert's role in population history, all to push the ridiculous Black Egypt fallacy, the Black Egypt that never existed. They imagine Africa as a single uniform continent to support a certain racial belief. Acknowledging the Sahara as a massive, ancient barrier complicates such beliefs because it shows that North Africa had distinct populations, ecosystems, migration patterns, and history vastly different from that of sub-Saharan Africa. The Sahara Desert has been one of the most powerful natural barriers and defining forces in human history, profoundly shaping the genetic and cultural landscape of Africa. Its vast, arid expanse, spanning over 3.6 million square miles, has long acted as both a divider and a filter between North Africa and sub-Saharan regions. This immense ecological boundary influenced migration patterns, trade routes, and population interactions for tens of thousands of years. Its impact on Egypt's population, culture, and genetic development is immense and thoroughly documented across archaeology, climatology, and genetics. The desert was not simply empty space, it was a determining factor in the formation of Egypt's unique civilization and its distinction from populations south of the Sahara. Obviously, and quite clearly, the Sahara preserved North Africa, including Egypt's distinct identity, and because of this natural isolation, ancient Egypt developed its own unique population. This produced a civilization that was Northeast African geographically, yet Eurasian biologically and culturally. For example, when early 20th century West African populations are compared with ancient Egyptian statuary, clear distinctions in physical and cultural features are readily apparent. This contrast is reinforced by linguistic, dietary, and skeletal evidence, none of which indicate a sub-Saharan origin for ancient Egyptians. Such comparative analysis challenges the core assumptions of Afrocentric interpretations that attempt to usurp and replace ancient Egypt's identity without sufficient empirical support. Here we witness early 20th century Igbo populations juxtaposed with ancient Egyptian statuary. Sub-Saharan populations clearly do not resemble the ancient Egyptians documented in the archaeological record, and even the most ardent Afrocentric would be hard-pressed to claim otherwise. The phenotypes, genetic profiles, language affiliations, dietary patterns, and skeletal morphology of sub-Saharan groups are not reflected in ancient Egypt's archaeological record. This straightforward comparison underscores the mismatch between Afrocentric falsehoods and the multidisciplinary scientific evidence, including archaeology, genetics, and anthropology. Such a simple compare and contrast approach effectively challenges the core assumptions underlying Afrocentric interpretations of ancient Egypt. Simply, this basic compare and contrast undermines every Afrocentric argument imaginable. They look mad, don't they? Almost as if someone told them they were not ancient Egyptians. Many underestimate how vast and impassable the Sahara was for most of human history. Before the camel was introduced around 1000 AD, trans-Saharan travel was nearly impossible. This means that for most of North Africa's history, genetic exchange between North Africa and Sub-Sahara was practically non-existent. Instead, Egypt interacted heavily with the Levant and Mediterranean, where travel and migration was easier. Sub-Sahara is a geographic and population genetic term, not an invention. It's used to distinguish populations south of the Sahara Desert, which for tens of thousands of years acted as a major ecological and genetic barrier. Every Genetic Database 1000 Genomes Human Genome Diversity Project, Allen Ancient DNA Resource, uses this distinction because populations north and south of the Sahara show different allele frequencies, admixture histories, and distinct ancient ancestry components. That's right, the Sahara is real. It describes biogeography, not politics. It is one of the biggest factors in Africa's history. Ignoring it erases the geography that actually shaped all of Africa's civilizations throughout time. In an April 2025 study titled Ancient DNA from the Green Sahara Reveals Ancestral North African Lineage, authored by Nada Salem, Johannes Krause, van der Loosdrecht et al., the researchers discuss how both the Sahara Desert and the so-called Green Sahara periods acted as powerful barriers between North Africa and sub-Saharan Africa. These ecological barriers, combined with social and cultural barriers, spatial structuring of populations, and the selective adoption of specific practices, may have facilitated the widespread dissemination of similar archaeological features, while limiting extensive genetic admixture. This genetic discontinuity is consistent with modern data, which show substantial genetic differentiation across the Sahara beyond just a geographical gap. Our findings suggest that sporadic Green Sahara events, particularly before pastoralism, were insufficient to allow for considerable genetic exchange, mirroring the Sahara's persistent role in limiting human genetic flow, as reflected in both ancient and modern population structures. And so Bantus, Khoisan, Pygmies and Sub-Saharans alike did not have any relation, contribution, exchange or influence whatsoever with ancient Egypt. In fact, none of these groups even knew Egypt existed and most probably still don't. By erasing the Sahara's role as one of the most formidable natural divides in human history, they deny the very geographic and historical realities that shaped ancient Egypt, North Africa, sub-Saharan and its people. They are literally trying to take the Sahara out of Africa. What's likewise hypocritical is that the very ideologues who accuse Europeans of taking Egypt out of Africa, despite Europeans being the innovators who mapped the world and launched satellites that define its geography, are the same ideologues who, in practice, take Lower Egypt out of Egypt and therefore out of Africa. By doing so, Afrocentrics render the Sekemti or Pshent double crown, the ancient symbol of a unified Upper and Lower Egypt, meaningless.